By now, we have to at least start acknowledging that when it comes to the coronavirus, we have to admit that we will never be completely safe. And that's with everything in the world, right? The leftist ideology right now is that we cannot open up until we get rid of the virus. Well, in reality, viruses they can never be truly exterminated. For example, a virus can remain dormant in a person's body. This is due to the body creating something called antibodies. The antibodies end up suppressing the virus, and then the virus can emerge if the immune system of the individual ends up becoming weaker. But that's with every other disease. A virus can never be truly eradicated, even with a vaccine. A vaccine, all it does, at least to my knowledge, because I'm not a medical professional, from what I remember from my biology classes, is that a virus typically in a vaccine, what it typically does is that it introduces the virus to the body, but in that way, what ends up doing is that the body is able to recognize the virus, therefore being able to create the antibodies and then, you know, be able to combat it efficiently. Every time when I would get a flu shot as a kid, and I hated going to the doctor and I hated getting the flu shots. The reason why was not because I was afraid of needles, but it was because every time I would get the flu shot, the next day I would end up becoming very sick. But the following day, I would get I would pretty much recover from that. Why? Because my body ended up becoming used to having, the vaccine in the body. Not to mention, it was able to combat, the virus that it introduced into my body. So that's one thing that people need to understand. A vaccine isn't going to eradicate the virus. But going back to with Matt Walsh from Daily Wire, the title reads, "We are never going to be completely safe. We have to learn to live with that reality." And to some degree, it is the case. Now, when it comes to me and this issue with the coronavirus, if you weren't aware, Elon Musk right now is making the news. Why? Because he decided to defy the orders from a county in California, because we all know how great California is when it comes to freedom. But he decided to defy the county's orders, even though Gavin Newsom gave the green light. And then, and here's the kicker too. And like when I heard about this, I thought it was in the Twilight Zone. But even Gavin Newsom and Donald Trump agreed that Elon Musk has every right to open up his factory now. But the county where that factory is located in doesn't want to let Elon Musk, have people return to work. But here's the thing, though. This is very, I would say, very, very gray. Now, I do not believe that an employer has the right to force you to come to work. I don't think so. I think that's wrong. But what Elon Musk is doing, he essentially, and he made it clear that the employees who want to come back to work are free to do so. And if you do not want to come to work, you're free to do so as well. But the thing is, though, is that since many of these individuals are paid through, an hour, through hourly wages, if they do not want to come into work, they don't get paid. Now you may be thinking, well, that's unfair because so they're afraid, and therefore you're basically kind of basically saying he's technically blackmailing them to come to work. That's not the case, though. I mean, you can always file for unemployment, but that can only get you so far, especially when a lot of people are filing for unemployment. What a lot of people want to do is get back to work. Why? Because if the virus isn't going to kill them, they're probably gonna die of other things, starvation. Maybe they're gonna lose their homes. You never know. The virus is not the entire threat, and if anything, I don't think it's right for people to be shutting down businesses and tattling on their neighbors because they refuse to follow the lockdown orders. We can only do so much before people start disobeying. But here's the thing, like I said, you're gonna say, well, Carlos, you're being selfish. You're being selfish because what about other people we're gonna be putting at risk? Okay, that's up for argument. And I'm gonna ask you a similar question. What about all those people that you put at risk when it comes to the flu? You do know that every time you go outside and you carry the flu, because a lot of people carry the flu virus. Every time you go outside, you endanger people with the flu. But but why aren't you staying indoors? See what I mean? That's the same logic. Every time you exit your home and you're driving your car, you're potentially endangering someone because you might hit them with your car. Someone might hit you with their car. But people still do it anyway. Why? Because some degree we've gotten used to it. We really have. The coronavirus is never going to go away. We have to live with the reality that some degree, yes, some people might get sick, some may die. But if we do not get rid of this little bubble thinking, oh, we must stay safe, we must stay locked down, we must shut down all businesses that are non-essential, people are going to get desperate. They're basically gonna they're gonna resist. First of all, that's one thing they're gonna resist. They're gonna say, screw the government, I'm doing whatever I want at this point. When people lose their jobs, they're gonna get mad. And one thing that, if anything, that's showing right now, is that people are starting to hate the government in general. Because a lot of people are starting to realize that the government shouldn't have a right to tell the people or determine, if anything, what's essential and what isn't. But let's read a little bit of what Matt Walsh has to say. A recent CNN headline claims that 68% of Americans say vaccine is needed before returning to normal life. This, as expected, is fake news. The actual data shows that 68% of Americans believe a vaccine is a very important factor when they think about their willingness to return to normal activities. Obviously, there is a clear and significant difference between very important and needed. Still, this is troubling because it does show that many Americans seem to be at least hoping that they can wait until a vaccine arrives before they get back to living their lives. Even more so, it shows that the media wants us to think, us to think we think, right? What we can take from this headline is not that nearly 70% of Americans think a vaccine is absolutely necessary, but that CNN thinks we should think the vaccine is absolutely necessary. Notice a massive shift that has occurred, and not just imposed CNN headlines. We were originally told that we needed to shut down for about 2 weeks, 15 days to slow the spread, was the slogan. But the interesting thing about it is that 15 days to slow the spread is the part where it says 15 days and also slow the spread. It is well past 15 days now, and the spread has been slowed. Flatten the curve was the other motto, and we've done that too. The only places in America that haven't flattened the curve are the places that never had a curve to flatten. Yet much of the country is still locked down, and the states that opened are condemned as havens of ignorant, reckless grandma killers. What happened? Here's the problem. The problem that I have with a lot of these governments, especially in my home state of California, because we all know how California is a good freedom loving state. I personally like to call it California because I really, really hate what they made this state, and I tell you right now, I study history. I want to be a history teacher. I always mention this a lot in my videos. But reading the history of California, it's actually a really good one. The state used to be a really, really beautiful state. People wanted to come here. But something changed where the people started realizing the state isn't so good. Either that or isn't as good as it used to be. People are leaving the state. I know a few friends that left the state for other states. My girlfriend's sister-in-law and her brother, they got married and they moved to Texas. Good on them. They have two little girls. They're raising them in in a good environment. And I'm very happy for them. My cousin Daniel, shout out to my cousin Daniel, he lives in Nevada. He lives a very happy life over there, and I'm glad that he's living a happy life. But California isn't the state that needs to, it isn't the state that it used to be. In California, if anything, it's very frustrating because a lot of these states, especially Democrat-run states, they give us a time frame. Oh, we're gonna open up by this date, and then as that date approaches, say, oh well, we're gonna extend it to this date, and then as that date approaches, they extend it again, extend it again. Some states have even declared that they're not gonna open until November or September. You can fact check me on that. But the point is, a lot of these Democrat-run states are proposing a date to open up, and as that date approaches, they just extend it and extend it. In some cases, some governors even extend the deadline. Or sorry, not the deadline, but the date to open up. They extend it because they hate people protesting their policies. If anything, I think that's ridiculous. But the point of this video isn't about whether or not it isn't whether or not you believe in what's going on or whatever. That's not the point. The point is, at least I'm hoping to do with this video, is that to help you realize that we're never going to be truly safe. Like I said, every time when you go out, when you go driving in your car, you could potentially get in a car accident. Same thing with the flu. Every time you go out, you're potentially exposing someone else to the flu, but you never cared about it. Why? Because it's stuff that we do every single day. And there's one thing that, if anything, that if one thing is that when it comes to my anthropology class, something useful did come out of this. And if anything, is that humans in general tend to be afraid of things that are very minor, but usually because they're not accustomed to it. For example, in my case, I'm not a big fan of flying in planes. I've never flown in one, and I will never want to fly in one because I'm afraid of the plane crashing. However, if anything, statistically, planes you're more likely to be safe on a plane than in a car. Why? Because in a plane, you don't have a chance of having a collision. There might be some problems, but you're more safer in a plane. In a car, you're constantly driving. You could potentially get hit by someone, etc. But the reason why people are more likely, in my case, I'm more in favor of driving a car to my destination, is because it's something that I'm used to doing. Right? Another example, when it comes to the idea of guns. Before I started shooting guns, I was afraid of them. I didn't even want to touch them because I was just afraid of the object. But the moment I started going to the shooting range, I was in love with the guns. Like I was like, okay, I want to try this one. I want to try this one. Oh, what's that one? And you're like, oh, I want to try that one too. After that, I see a gun. I was like, oh, that's a really cool firearm. What kind is it? How many? What's the mag capacity? Oh, this and that. That's the thing. People tend to be afraid of stuff they aren't accustomed to. And in reality, we're gonna have to get used to this. And here's the thing. And again, you might say that I'm selfish, but here's the thing. I'm more of a, I would say, libertarian when it comes to this stance because it's really frustrating when the government tells me what I can and cannot do. It's really frustrating. Now, luckily, I still have my job, but a lot of people don't. So I'm not going to be telling you, I'm not going to be speaking on behalf of the people who do not have or are unemployed. I'm not going to do that here. But what I am going to tell you is that if you want to go back to work, you have every right to do so. If you do not want to go back to work until a vaccine is found, that's up to you as well. But one thing that you need to recognize that the government shouldn't tell us what they can and should not do. I'm not a big fan of salon owners getting arrested for opening up their businesses, and yet meanwhile they're releasing convicts, rapists, murderers, pedophiles into the streets because they do not want them to catch the coronavirus, and yet they're sending a salon owner to a jail, which according to them isn't safe because it might be contaminated with the virus. I'm not a big fan of of some cities like New York City where Bill de Blasio decrees that the right to protest is suspended in order to reduce the spread of the virus. I'm not a big fan of that. If you want to go out, that should be up to you to decide, not the government. Not the government shouldn't tell you where you can and cannot go because that's one thing we want to do. But again, it's up to you. I'm more of a libertarian on this stance when it comes to opening up. I do believe we should start opening up. I think to some degree I wouldn't say we over panicked, but we did have a right to be panicked though. We did have a right to be scared and everything. But so far, I think, in my opinion, I could be wrong. I think the worst already passed. A lot of these emergency hospitals, like the ones like the ones that were there just in case the real hospitals were overcrowded and stuff like that. A lot of them weren't even used. But the media wants us to believe that the people are not willing to go back to work unless a vaccine is found. And here's the thing, Elon Musk, a lot of his workers are willing to go back to work. Why? Because now it's a matter of I go to work to feed my family or we starve. That's the alternative. If anything, people to some degree they need to understand that hey, maybe the ends do not justify the means. That's what I believe. But again, in my case, my stance is you don't want to go back to work, by all means you have every right. If you want to go back to work, you have every right to do that too. If you want to open your business, go ahead and do it. Everything we do has a risk. Everything has a risk. By going outside and going to a business, you risk yourself getting the virus. But in reality, at the same time, when you stay inside, you risk yourself. You know, you risk your family and yourself starving because without money, you don't have food, right? Now you can say, well, you have unemployment, you get on the unemployment checks. That's true, but the government can only print so much money before it starts to devalue our currency, and that's not what. And I'm not a big fan of that either, because when everyone has a lot of money, where is that money coming from? Is the government printing more? Are they borrowing more? Right? That's what we got to consider. But again, whether or not you want to go out, that's up to you to decide. But you shouldn't be the one who's dictating people what they could and couldn't do. The people who are going out and demanding that they open up the economy, if you want to do it, feel free to open your business. I believe you should. You have a business, open it up. That's the risk you're taking. By all means, go ahead. But you shouldn't be demanding people to just go back to work either. I don't think an employer should open up a business and say, hey, if you don't come back to work, you're fired. I don't think that's fair either. But if you want to go open up your business and take that risk, that's up to you to decide. And I agree with it. And you should force people to come out of quarantine as well. But the people who are in quarantine, who do not want to open up the economy, you don't have a right either. You want to stay home, that is your choice. But you don't have the right to dictate you don't have the right to dictate your neighbors to stay in their homes as well. If your neighbor wants to go out, let them. Let them go out. If they get sick, that's their fault. You're not their babysitter, and they're not your babysitter. But if anything, like I said, we will never be truly safe. We need to at least acknowledge that. But let me know what you guys think about this. Do you think we should open up? What do you guys think of the situation with Elon Musk? Is he in the right? Are you guys surprised that Gavin Newsom and Donald Trump agree that Elon Musk has a right to open up his business in California? I'm surprised just as much as you. Trust me. When I heard this, I was like, I must be in the Twilight Zone because Gavin Newsom and Trump hardly get along and they hardly agree on anything. But what do you guys think about this? Are you the kind of person who thinks like me? If you want to go out, feel free to do so. If you want to stay in, feel free to do so. You should do whatever makes you comfortable. But no side has the right to force the other side to do what they do not want to do. The people who want to stay in don't have the right to keep their neighbors locked in, and the people who want to go out don't have the right to force their neighbors to come out of quarantine, right? But again, let me know what you guys think about this. Should we open up? Do you agree with my stance? What is your stance? Do you disagree with it slightly? Not at all, or do you disagree entirely? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Subscribe if you're new, share the video with your friends, and I'll see you guys next time.